Hey everybody, and welcome back to Video Game Esoterica. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Instinct Matrimelee, released in May 2003 by Noise Factory. It is the fifth game in the Power Instinct series. You have Power Instinct 1, 2, Legends, as well as Groove On Fight, which was titled not under the Power Instinct name, but was still a part of the series. You have Matrimelee, which is the fifth, and then you have a sixth game that was only released in arcades and is yet to come home. This is one of the second-tier fighting games with the Neo Geo AES. It's one of my favorite games in my collection, but as far as fighters on the Neo Geo are concerned, it's probably considered to be not one of the top-level games. As far as character selection is concerned, you do have a pretty big roster of characters. There are some duplicates, although they may look the same. They have different fighting styles. There are also some hidden characters that I did not activate. You need to activate those through the Neo Geo Universal BIOS. The main interesting thing about this game is that depending on what region you played in, you're going to get two completely different experiences as far as the soundtrack is concerned. On the Japanese BIOS, the soundtrack is quite interesting. It's great, but it's also very weird. You have songs about fat people, you have songs about the joy of the internet, and many other really strange things. If you play this game on the European or the American BIOS, you're going to get a very generic fighting game soundtrack. It's still good, but it loses a lot of charm that this game inherently has. As far as the fighting is concerned, it is quite competent. There's plenty of combos. There is a bit of cheapness, although I did play this game on the standard difficulty level, and I was able to get through all the way to the boss, Princess Sissy, without once losing a match or having to continue. You will see when we get to the end, I have to basically cheat with the Universal BIOS to beat the game, as Princess Sissy is known to be one of the cheapest boss characters in the entire roster of Neo Geo fighting games. And SNK and Neo Geo games are notorious for having cheap bosses, so that really goes to say something about how hard Princess Sissy actually is. Art-wise, the backgrounds are quite nice. There's a lot of animations concerned. There's a lot of frames of animation for each individual character. The special moves have a really nice pre-rendered background to them. If you see on that screen behind you, this song in this level is all about how much this girl enjoys eating food. It makes no sense, but it's a really good song. It definitely sounds a lot different than a lot of other fighting game soundtracks on the Neo Geo. So in that respect alone, it's definitely worth your playthrough of this game. If you do want to pick it up, I highly recommend emulating it. On the Neo Geo, depending on what region you get, you're looking at between $1,200 and $2,000 to get an original copy, and you do need to be very careful as there are a lot of bootlegs on the AES these days. I mean, it's been going on for years, but you definitely have to buy from somebody you trust, and you need to have the cartridge opened up so you can look at both internal PCBs to check to make sure they're not bootlegs or they're not repros using MVS ROMs, because it's almost impossible to buy AES games now without going through multiple rounds of confirming that it's actually real. On this stage, the entire theme of the song is Debu, which is apparently Japanese for fat. You have these fat sumo characters dancing, and then you have the entire fat band singing about being fat. Maybe it's not the most socially conscious thing in the world, but it is quite funny. You will notice, as far as this background is concerned, it is the same as the last stage. They do change up some of the foreground elements, but it looks like the game may have been rushed slightly just because each individual character doesn't have their own 100% unique background. There is one character in the game that has a forest background that is unlike anything else that you will see, but it barely appears. In 10 playthroughs, you might be able to see that background and character once. It doesn't really seem to be dictated based on a difficulty level or what character you start as. It seems to be quite random. I tried to capture it for this playthrough, but honestly, it just became impossible. I would have taken an entire day to try to find that stage, so I just decided not to do that. You can also download this game for PlayStation 2 or purchase it. You can play it on an emulator, although I really do recommend emulating the MAME ROM or the Neo Geo ROM if you do not want to spend the money. The PlayStation 2 version actually takes 4 characters out. Matrimelee on the AES has 4 characters from Rage of the Dragons. It's like a non-canon edition, just for fun. Those 4 characters are removed on the PlayStation 2 version. But the biggest issue with the PlayStation 2 version is that there is a lot of input lag and a lot of the inputs get dropped. So as far as playing the game is concerned, it makes it much more difficult. So it's really, I would just avoid it completely. You'll see here, we are now in a locker room. This is going to appear twice as well, which kind of goes towards that repeating backgrounds. You do get some different, foreground elements in the locker rooms, depending on what stage you're in, but that's the thing about Matrimelee. It's a super competent fighter. It's a lot of fun. It just seems like if they had another 6 months to finish that development, that we may have gotten something a little more unique. You will see in the background of that shower there is a woman showering, so they did put a lot of little hidden tidbits into the backgrounds. I would just love to know what this game would have been like had it continued development for another 6 months to a year to see what we could have gotten out of that. So after this, there is a 6th game in the series. It's only been released in arcades and only in Japan. You can download it and play it. It runs on the Taito X2 platform, and that basically is just PC hardware that you can actually install onto your system. It'll work with basically any modern processor and graphics card. So all you do is download the Power Instinct game and the little wrapper that allows it to run on any Windows PC and not natively just the installation of Windows that ran on the X2, and you can enjoy that as well. It is quite good. I highly recommend it. So on this stage, you have a song that's all about the internet and computers, how much fun they are, and the entire fight takes place in a computer store. So that's really where Matrimelee kind of comes alive. I'll actually stop talking and let you listen to this song, and I'll come back in a little bit. So there you go. That was the song about how great computers and the internet are. Really never read any interviews or comments in regards to why the soundtrack is the way it is, but I definitely love it. It's definitely something that I recommend. If you play this game, you absolutely have to play it on the Japanese BIOS. You'll see there I did get tagged by a special move. The graphics on that are all pre-rendered, but they look quite good. This game incorporates a unique stress meter. You'll just see that it happened right there. If you block too many hits or you get hit too many times, that stress meter builds up, and then you will basically burst into blue flame. If you are near your opponent, or if your opponent's near you, they will take damage and get hit back. It's basically just a component to make sure that the matches don't become way too one-sided. It allows you to have some sort of recourse to get out of, a jam if you're stuck in the corner there. I think I come back for this fight. I can't remember. I recorded this about a week ago, and I don't exactly remember how this went, but it looks like I did come back from it. Again, you will notice that this is the same locker room we encountered earlier in the game. It is decorated differently. You have a teepee and one of the other characters, but unfortunately it is just another reused background, and I would say that that's probably this game's biggest detriment, is that a lot of art assets were reused multiple times. Short of that, I would say this is probably the best game in the series. Groove on Fight is really good as well. You can get that on the Saturn, but the first 3 games, they're decent, but they're not as good as Matrimelee or the games moving forward. This kind of seems like the series hit its stride when they were making this game. It was made by Noise Factory, and they actually went on to make Metal Slug 5 for the Neo Geo, as well as the next game in the Matrimelee Power Instinct series. Subtitle on that is the Ancestor Commemoration, or that's what it would loosely translate to in English if the game was brought over. So hopefully at some point in time they actually do port that game, but it has been out for years, so I'm highly assuming we're never going to see that. Dodged a special attack there. So there's 2 of these old lady characters, and they are Power Instinct staple. They've been in every single game. They have some interesting moves, so she can actually take her dentures out and throw them at you. So the referee in the back reminds me a lot of Samurai Spirits or Samurai Showdown. I've never been able to actually take him out of the foreground and attack with him. I'm not sure if you can, but I definitely think you could because he is there. So now you're going to see we're going to fight Princess Sissy. The storyline of the game is basically the king is looking for a husband for the princess, or if you are playing as a female character, a wife for his son. So each ending kind of ends humorously depending on what character you're playing as, and you will see that. I have played this game probably 100 times. I have never once legitimately beaten Princess Sissy. She can predict pretty much every single move you're making, and her hits have so much damage on them that it basically, I don't know who can beat her. I've seen YouTube videos of people doing it. I just don't have the time or the motivation to actually go ahead and attempt it. I just lose my mind trying to. So you will see I'll go into the Universal BIOS menu after I lose this first match and go ahead and basically cheat to continue. The Wedding March plays throughout the entire fight, which is quite interesting. I really love that kind of touch that we get. But once again, you will see we're back in that same arena area, which unfortunately just goes to show that part of the reason this game might be considered not the best is because of the laziness that's inherent in the graphics. I do love that you get turned into a frog, though. A lot of the different characters have special moves where you can turn into animals, although weirdly enough, not all of the inputs are known. If you actually look up the specials of this game, some characters have specials that either aren't, you don't have the moveset for them, or no one's actually been able to figure out how to do them. So I'm not sure if they're missing, or if no one's actually figured it out yet. But short of that, that is Power Instinct Matrimelee. It is an amazing game. If you are a hardcore Neo Geo collector, I'd certainly recommend you pick it up. It's great to add to the collection. If you're a casual fighting game fan, definitely just download the ROM and play it on MAME. But short of that, we'll be back next week with the final episode of Season 2 of Video Game Esoterica. Don't worry, we do have a third season coming up on a completely different topic. Otherwise, if you could just go down below and hit the thumbs up and subscribe button, it really helps us out. Otherwise, I'll let you guys watch the rest of this fight. Thanks so much for watching. You can check us out on Instagram at Chicago Game Collector. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday for the season finale of Video Game Esoterica Season 2. Bye-bye.